I love being the go-between, thinking about communicating to the customer and sales teams, but then also understanding kind of what's going on the technical side of actually executing. I love being that kind of interface.
Hello, I'm Lindsey Akin, and I manage career services at the Department of Management Science and Engineering at Stanford University. Welcome to MS&E Stories and Voices, Graduating Student Profiles. Today, we're featuring Kelly Devens, a co-term student who started on her MS degree in spring 2020 while finishing up her bachelor's in mechanical engineering. All of our students are important to us, but Kelly is a particular favorite of mine because I actually met her right before she started any of her Stanford classes, back in 2016 during her new student orientation, and we chatted quarterly until she declared. Now that she's graduating, I'm feeling nostalgic and so proud of her. Kelly, it's wonderful to be talking with you today. Why don't we get started with an overview of how you came to realize that a master's in management science and engineering was what you wanted to do?
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Lindsay, for having me. Yeah, so I studied, as you said, mechanical engineering in my undergrad. I had a variety of different interests, kind of long-standing interests in biomechanics and aerospace. And so I spent 2 summer internships with an aerospace company, which was very focused in the technical areas related to my major. And that second summer, I got even more technical when I had some interest in bubbling up more to systems engineering. And I had a moment that summer where I just realized that being an ME for my career wasn't really for me. I thoroughly enjoyed the curriculum that I learned. I think it taught me some very priceless skills, critical thinking, team collaboration, problem solving. But I realized I didn't want to restrict myself to just technical design and execution. And instead of being just one piece of a puzzle, I find it a lot more fulfilling to drive the picture that puzzle is making up. I realized I needed exposure to business planning, financial analysis, product management, marketing, you name it, if I really wanted to be impactful in that sense. And so that is when I started looking at other options. I came across the MS&E MS program. Obviously, I'd come across some students and friends in my undergrad career who was in MS&E. I'd taken some MS&E classes that I really enjoyed in my undergrad, and I just really became very immediately interested in the program. So I bought a GRE study book that summer and started getting prepped to apply. That fall, my senior year, applied to the MS&E co-term, as well as a pretty wide slate of different roles across like tech, consulting, data, even entertainment, mainly in program manager or analyst roles. And that process, I think, really helps me narrow down what I wanted in a job, as well as what I didn't want to pursue. I eventually accepted my role with Microsoft in that fall. And then I was admitted to the MS&E co-term in the winter. So shortly before evacuating campus for COVID, I read the acceptance letter right before what would actually become my last performance on campus. So we were hosting like a little cabaret performance, and who knew that would be, the last time I'd perform there. But of course, senior spring didn't really go as planned. While we were, sitting around not really able to do much, my mom encouraged me to load up on some MS&E classes to kind of get my feet wet, figure out what the whole program was about. And despite the bumps of our first virtual quarter, I really enjoyed the classes that I took. That really encouraged me to continue with the program after my undergrad graduation. I think knowing that I still had the option to continue with my education with Stanford after that spring, it helped a lot with the grief of around losing the proper goodbye to my undergrad. And so I was super excited to be able to have the opportunity to continue as a Stanford student.
Yeah, I think back to that spring. I mean, we were all just so devastated for all of you guys who are seniors. You worked at Stanford a long time. You see all of these fun activities, the fountain hopping, everybody running around, having their senior spring.
I remember I had this bucket list, my senior year bucket list. And the fall was, recruiting season. And so I was super busy and put off stuff. In the winter, I was hard at work writing my thesis, but say la vie.
So now you're leaving on your own terms.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. We're coming up on 3 years since my undergrad ended, which is honestly wild. I can't believe it's already been that long, but it definitely helps me, hold on to this deep connection that I had to the university. I thoroughly loved my undergrad years and, as we said, unfortunately was hurriedly forced to leave amid these unideal circumstances. I think just knowing like, hey, this isn't actually over. Like last year's graduation, 2020 had our graduation in 2022, which was a really, really wonderful experience. I'm very grateful that they stuck with that experience for us. I think it gave me a lot of the closure that I needed. And it was kind of a celebration for both my undergrad degree as well as all the hard work that I was putting in for my master's in the years since. It's interesting, for the first time in 7 years, I'm no longer a Stanford student, but I think with that closure that I got, it's okay to have that come to an end, and it feels kind of time for the next chapter as I just turned 25, which is like a crazy time, and so it's moving into the next phase.
I also feel, knowing you and your love of all of the theater that you had, that having your final real thing at Stanford be that cabaret performance just also feels very you.
It does. Yeah. I had the opportunity to do a couple of shows in my undergrad, and with everything going on, I didn't have an opportunity to do a big show my senior year. And so it was a very cool student-led, we're just going to like put on a cool performance. You get to choose, cabaret of your choice to do your own song. And so I got to sing something that was from Dear Evan Hansen, actually. Very beautiful song called Words Fail that I'd been wanting to perform for ages. It was great. And it was my boyfriend performed, a couple of my very close friends from theater performed. I'm glad that I at least had that closure in terms of my theater career at Stanford as well.
As we think about during the co-term, you went part-time because you had this job at Microsoft. And so you had that opportunity there to apply what you were learning immediately as you were working.
Yeah.
Any particular classes that immediately you were able to put into practice? How was all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the stars just kind of aligned for me with this remote program. I actually hadn't realized when I first applied that this would be an option for me. I was actually living on Oahu, starting my role at Microsoft in September 2020, when I attended the MS&E autumn orientation with you and everybody in the department. And that is when I realized that the concentration I had chosen, technology and engineering management, was eligible for this honors cooperative program. I could actually complete everything virtually. Microsoft has an amazing, tuition support program, which also was a huge benefit for me, because until then, I figured I would have to come back to campus full time. Saying have to, obviously gorgeous campus. I adore it, but it would disrupt my career, my job at the time, and would have required a much larger financial investment on my part. And so this really gave that best of both worlds. And I think it solved that dilemma that I always hear people talking about with grad school of, when is the best time to do it, where some people recommend getting it done, getting it out of the way after undergrad when your brain is still in academic mode, while others say that returning after some time in the workforce is more useful and impactful. But I really got to, like you said, apply what I learned in the classroom directly to what I was working on at Microsoft as a PM on the Azure Space team. In my case, I had a few really insightful classes. I think off the top of my head, MS&E 271, Global Entrepreneurial Marketing, was a fantastic course that I really enjoyed. I think it opened my eyes to everything that marketing actually encompasses, far beyond just advertising, which I naively kind of believed was the case ahead of time. I'm working on a team that's sort of like a startup within Microsoft. And so we're very early days in a lot of our products. I'm on a generally available product, but it's still just going through this process of, understanding your target market and user personas, walking through customer success and figuring out how to reduce the friction of touch points all along the customer journey, demand creation, pricing. Like, they just articulated it so well in the class. And I'm like, this is my playbook for how I approach marketing, but also just the product development and management and everything. And I think also a lot of the classes that I took through the program, especially, since we're Stanford and Silicon Valley and everything, have a lot of entrepreneurial focus to it. And so given the unique nature of my team, a lot of other business at Microsoft is about scaling and doing this huge volumes and things like that. But, we're still in the beginning, proving out ideas, learning about 0 to 1 product creation, total addressable market, just learning the basics of all that has also been very helpful for me in my role.
You're in the space product at Microsoft. I'm going to do a cheesy pun here of
I love it.
Launching into your future.
Yes.
What are those future plans?
Think kind of building on the cheesy pun. At this point, I'm not even on like 10 of my launch countdown, I would say, but I'm not in any rush, I would say. I love the work that I'm doing right now. I'm still learning a ton every day,
Sounds really fascinating.
I'm so lucky. I think I'm at the coolest job at the company. How to build a great product and scale it, customer success, relationship building. Stanford has given me such a strong foundation that, when the right opportunity comes along, I'm confident that I'll be able to go after it. Like I said, a lot of the MS&E classes focused on entrepreneurship. And so I would be excited to eventually move into a startup. I have a lot of interests and I like to wear a lot of hats, which startups uniquely support, unlike a, big corporate kind of environment. It also, I believe, presents some opportunity for deeper impact, less red tape. And, I'm hopeful that my startup within corporate experience will be an advantage there. So, I'd be able to understand how to operate in both of these environments. In terms of what specific area or industry I'd like to move into, I'm really open to a lot of ideas, maybe stay in the space sector or climate science. AI is obviously very hot right now. So I think it's just an open question for the future as I watch these industries evolve.
So when we chatted earlier, you talked about a particular ETL tool where you realized you're kind of this risk-averse perfectionist. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is funny, my interest in the startup sector, given that I consider myself to be a very risk-adverse person. I'm very grounded, constantly sort of analyzing how things could go wrong. I think through some of the ETL speakers, I did realize that those set of skills it's also important to couple with the founders who are these super lofty dreamers. And so I think that there is a time and place for that kind of pragmatism. That said, I am still actively trying to outgrow some of my perfectionism that I've been plagued with since I was a kid. I mean, if you ask my mom, she'll tell you that as a little kid learning my ABCs, I would, sing the alphabet song. And if I made any kind of mistake along the way, I would stop and start over at the very beginning, which I'm sure didn't drive them crazy at all. I received some advice recently that perfectionism is rooted in fear and it prevents us from reaching our full potential. And yeah, a couple of those ETL speakers also spoke on that theme, the need to outgrow perfectionism. I remember Connie Chan from A16Z said that by trying out a lot of different life experiences, you slowly outgrow and overcome that fear of failure, and that you get braver every time you do something that feels strange. And so that is something I've been trying to exercise and sort of keep in mind in my life recently.
for just being 25. You've done a lot of that already. I mean, you grew up East Coast, you were here on West Coast, you talked already, you were in Oahu, you did these different internships to explore widely. And then you also have this really artistic side of you with your love of theater. Talk about how that artistic side of you has informed how you think about your learning and your work and what that might look going forward for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this has been a sort of lifelong battle inside my brain of balancing my passion for the performing arts with my technical engineering side of my brain. It's that riskiness and uncertainty of a musical theater career or the security and stability of engineering. I'm hopeful that perhaps, there's some perfect way to blend the two down the road. Who knows, maybe I'll launch a tech startup for the theater world or something. But I actually moved to New York last summer. So I've been here just shy of a year. And that has allowed me to really reintroduce theater back into my life, which I really love. So yeah, when thinking about how those two parts of my brain kind of complement each other, I think my theatrical and artistic self has helped my ability to communicate a lot in the technical world, definitely improved my public speaking and presentation skills, and also how I can communicate that technical information. I love being the go-between, thinking about communicating to the customer and sales teams, but then also understanding kind of what's going on the technical side of those actually executing. I love being that kind of interface.
Such an important role too, that person that can be in the middle, it can talk to both constituents.
For now, in terms of what does it look like as in my adult life, I think that's a outstanding question. I've connected with a couple of my theater friends recently where that's one of the questions we ask each other, like, what does the arts look like in your life? And I think it's difficult because it's one of those one of the only artistic interests that's so difficult to do at the hobby or intramural level. Like, you can't be in your bedroom and put on a show. So for now, I've been really enjoying going to a lot of Broadway shows. I actually just won lottery tickets for a show last night. So, at a moment's notice, I could, go up to Times Square and see a show. I've been taking some dance classes on weekends and getting back into singing more and more. So I'm looking to get a vocal coach, enroll in some acting classes, and start looking for those performing opportunities just to, get back to what I love. And whether I will actually make that leap into a career is yet to be determined. But for now, I'm just really loving having both technical and artistic elements back into my life.
That's awesome. Sounds perfect for you. So I have a couple of questions that I like to wrap up with. And the first one is your advice for people coming into the program you're finishing up that someone else might not have already told them.
I think with this, I have a little bit of a unique perspective being a fully remote student, where there were certain things that I couldn't take for granted as somebody not on campus, as compared to when I was actually a student on campus every day. And I think I would recommend to just really keep an eye out for those opportunities to deeply engage with your fellow students as well as faculty. Looking back at my MS curriculum and experiences that I had, I felt that the quarters I spent collaborating with others and building something together, implementing what we actually learned in action, were much more fulfilling and felt very unique to Stanford, more so than the quarters that were just kind of lectures, PSET exam format. And I think it just pointed out to me that we have so many bright, talented, insightful people around you, and to really just make sure that you appreciate them. When I had those opportunities to engage with all the cool people that are at Stanford, I felt what makes Stanford so special much more acutely.
And then what is your life maxim, that signature phrase or mantra of yours that people roll their eyes out when they hear you saying it, but they also know that you're probably right?
That is a great one. And I'm sure it will evolve over time, but something that I sort of catch myself saying, either telling myself or, if giving a friend advice on something is what's meant to happen will happen. I think you can't always know the right path to take. And I think I definitely struggle with that, where I always try to optimize and make sure that I'm making the right decision and everything, but sometimes decisions are made without your input or your control. So when you're presented with those situations, you have to take away what learnings or silver linings that you can. And I really do believe that one day, looking back, it will all make sense. And it is what is uniquely, makes up your path.
Decision making under uncertainty. Sometimes you don't have all the information.
It's a hard
whole
one.
class about that. And then finally, 2 books and a podcast. 2 books you think everyone should read. One of them, MS&E or MS&E adjacent, ranging from that popular through to, the more technical textbook. The second book, just for fun. And then podcast is open-ended.
So for the first category, I would say The Startup of You by Reid Hoffman and Ben Casnocha. I actually read this for MS&E 271, and like I said, was one of my favorite classes. And it was for this assignment where we created a go-to-market strategy for ourselves and our careers, which was a really interesting experience to think through. I'd never thought about it in that kind of way. And I think this book complements that kind of mindset, where it covers a variety of topics, developing a competitive advantage, cultivating serendipity, identifying allies, planning and pivoting that you would usually think about in terms of a company. And it invites you to say, okay, let's apply this level of rigor and analysis to yourself, figure out how to grow, basically. So I really enjoyed that one. For my second book, I would say Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Devens. Isn't it fantastic? I finished it just a few weeks ago, so it's very top of mind for me. I loved it. As you know, it centers around these 2 childhood friends who reconnect in college and end up becoming these incredible creative partners in building video games together. So interesting premise, but I think that the characters also have this innate drive and ambition and connection. So it is, also relevant to Stanford MS&E students. The plot's about building this successful company, but narratively and emotionally, it's much more intricate than just that. And so I really enjoyed it.
It really is. It actually made Barack Obama's reading list.
There we go. Get another endorsement for that one. And in terms of podcasts, I do admit, now that I don't have a car or much of a commute, my podcast consumption has gone down, but I do try to start my day with NPR's Up First, when I'm making breakfast and stuff, just to stay up to date on the news. But, if we were to say 2 books and a TV show, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is my top show right now.
Well, Kelly, I have just been thrilled to talk to you today. This has been so interesting. You're always so thoughtful about how you approach your career and your studies and your theater life, and how you bring balance to your life and this perfectionism and embracing this kind of imperfect imperfectionism, I guess I would say, for you. So yes, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Lindsey. I really appreciate you having me on, and it's been wonderful to reconnect with you after, you welcomed me to campus all those years ago.
You're welcome. You better stay in touch.
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of MS&E Stories and Voices, Graduating Student Profiles. This episode was produced and edited by me, Lindsey Akin, with editing help from Jim Fabry. Our music was composed and performed by Catherine Barron, another student in our master's program. Please be sure to subscribe to us on Spotify or whichever platform you're listening through. And check out our website at msne.stanford.edu. It's msande.stanford.edu. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.